I'm my own pocket. Okay, today's daf Be'ez Hashem is daf Yid. Hi, Alan. Okay, we're up to daf Yud. Again, these Masechta Nazir was never learned. You see why Masechta Nazir in the yeshivas and by people, they didn't learn it because it wasn't so edited, and a lot of things that you learn somehow don't make sense, and even the Gemara is like missing words to flow, and it uses also a different, harder language. But anyway, we have it here, and Baruch Hashem, we're able to learn it in our generation. I will say that we just to backtrack, we learned yesterday, so that you'll remember yesterday basically that if a person said, "I am a Nazir, but I'm not, I'm Nazir from dried figs," it's like saying I'm a Nazir from potato chips. So Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir, because Beis Shammai interprets the person, unless he says otherwise, but Beis Shammai interprets the person's statement as saying, I want to be a Nazir. Then he wants to retract, what does it mean to be a Nazir? It's too difficult. So he wants to retract and say, no, I meant to be Nazir on figs, on dried figs. So Beis Shammai is of the opinion you cannot retract. Once you say you want to be a Nazir, no backsies. That's because Nazir is like saying something hegdish, and you can't take it back. What did Beis Hillel hold? Beis Hillel holds, yes, you could take it back. In fact, if you change your mind, toich kidei dibur, you have to do it right away. You said, I want to be a Nazir, and then you said, you know what, I just want to be a Nazir from chips, from dried figs. So Beis Hillel says you're not a Nazir at all, and also you're not also on dried figs because you didn't make the neder properly. So that's the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So that's what you got to remember from yesterday. Now we go into the Gemara and to the Mishnah. Again, here's an example of why things in Masechta Nazir don't make sense sometimes. The Mishnah says, Omar, if a man said, Amra parazu, that this cow just said, Hareini Nazira im oimedesani. The cow said, I'm going to be a Nazir if I stand up, if I could get up. So let's assume that the man saw a cow that just plots onto the ground. It's flat on the ground. And the man said, I heard this cow say that I'm going to be a Nazir if it gets up. Or let's say a man has a door that's stuck. And he said, the door just spoke to me. And it said, I want to be a Nazir if I open up. Okay, that's what the door just said. So Beis Shammai says Nazir. The man who spoke on the behalf. Hi Sheldon, we just began the Mishnah, Daf Yud.
Okay. What does it have to do with the behemoth?
Yeah, right. So how could the behemoth be a Nazir?
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Yes, that's what I said.
Right. So the man that said over the story, he becomes a Nazir. It doesn't make sense. Beis Hillel, man ain't a Nazir. Beis Hillel zukt as you're not a Nazir. The person that's saying over the story about the cow that talked. Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Afkisha Amru Beis Shammai, when Beis Shammai said that the guy who's telling over the story has to keep something, he has a prohibition on him. When he said Hare parazu alai karbim imay medisli, that he said it in such a way that the cow is a carbon. That means the cow becomes usher to me if it stands up. So this whole Mishnah does not make any sense. And let us begin the Gemara. Again, let's just repeat. The Mishnah said, a man says that this cow just said, I'm becoming a Nazir if I get up. The cow is on the floor flat. And the man said, I heard the cow talk and says that it wants to become a Nazir if it can get up, because it looks like the cow can get up. So the Gemara asks the obvious question, Hora miku mishta'i, can a cow talk? I mean, what's going on over here? The cows don't talk. So Amar Rabbi Bachama explained that the Mishnah is Chacham b'mayaskin, and he was talking about Kegoin It's not that a cow could talk. There's a cow that's flat on the ground right in front of him, right? Flat on the ground, not moving, stubborn. Ba'amar, and the man who's looking at this cow says, Kisvura parazu einai medes. This cow is thinking that it doesn't have the energy to get up. Sometimes if you watch a nature show and you see like a lion just flat, or you go to the zoo, you're thinking to yourself that the cow, that the animal doesn't have the power to get up. So that's what he's saying, that this cow is thinking to itself that it will never get up. And I agree. That's what you're saying. I agree with the estimation of the cow. It must be injured or something like that. Hareini nazir mipsara. I want to be a nazir from eating any meat of this cow. Im amdome aleh, if it gets up by itself. So here is a problem.
What does another has to do with the cow?
What?
And how come with the eating? It's all wine or grapes, something was a news.
Beautiful.
So what has to do with the cow?
That's why Beishamai. It's a very good question. So why does it have to do with meat? Hareini nozir mepsora imam deleh. I'm a nozir from meat. Makes sense. V'am deme'aleh. It stood up by itself. So now he has to be a nozir from the meat. It makes no sense. But Beishamai says no. We touch up his words as he's saying Hareini nozir. I want to be a nozir, a regular nozir. And then he says, "Oy I want to regret." He wants to change his mind, and he says, "No. I only meat. I'm a nozir from its meat. I'm not eating the meat." But you said I'm a nozir. Beishamai goes according to their opinion. And Beisil goes according to their opinion. Beishamai says you have to be a nozir. You said I want to be a nozir from the meat. 9. Beishamai says, just like min hagroigres min hadvela, have a nazir. When you say I want to be a nazir, and then you say I just don't want to eat figs, I want to be a nazir from dried figs. Beishamai says you're a nazir. Why does Beishamai say you're a nazir? Because you can't take back what you say. You said you want to be a nazir, that no backsies. Hachinami, in this case by the meat also. When you say you want to be a nazir just from the meat, it's basically you're saying two things. Hareini nazir, I'm a nazir. I don't want to be a nazir. I just want to be a nazir from the meat, but I don't want to be a regular nazir. So therefore, too bad. You said you're a nazir. Have a nazir, you automatically become a nazir. Beis Hillel says, lo have a nazir. You're not a nazir anymore. So you're not a nazir because you could retract on what you're saying. You could have charata what you said. So the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question. So you gave me three cases. Basically, you gave me 3 cases where a man says Hareini nazir from something that doesn't make sense. Hareini nazir from, and then he says dried figs. Hareini nazir from animal meat, from the animal meat. And the Mishnah gave you a case, Hareini nazir from a door. So and Beishamai says you're a nazir because you can't retract. So the Gemara says, why do I have to have this machlekes 3 times? V'ha'amruha Beishamai chadazimna. But Beishamai already explains their opinion that if you say Hareini nazir from potato chips or for Hareini nazir from anything, you are automatically a nazir. Because we interpret what you're saying as you want to be a nazir, but you just want to change your mind. So Beishamai said his opinion one time. Why do I have to have 3 different cases? So the Gemara says, Omar Rava says, Tartir Tlas. It's 2 or 3. You need both 2 cases and 3 cases. You need to teach this. V'chein Toner Rab Chia in his Brisa, he also copied over what Beishamai and Beis Hillel says, and he gave you Tarte Tlas 2 or 3 examples where Beishamai and Beis Hillel argue. Tarte Tlas 2 or 3 examples where they argue. In other words, that you do need all 3 cases to tell you Beishamai argues. Because I would say, Utsrichi, the Gemara says like this, the Itma Baha Geroigers to the Vela. If it would just say the case of Groigros and Devela. Man said, Hareini nazir from dried figs. So maybe the reason why Beis Shammai holds you're a Nazir, it's not because you're backtracking and having charata. Maybe you meant to say, I'm a Nazir from grapes. Once you say you're Nazir from grapes, you're Nazir from everything. But you said, instead of grapes, you said dried figs, because sometimes dried raisins look like dried figs. That's why you got confused. So therefore, Hasam hu the Amri Beis Shammai have a Nazir over there, when you're confusing it with something that confuses with grapes, like dried figs, which can be confused with raisins. So I say that reason why Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir, because he understands it was a slip of the tongue. Mishum de michalfin ba'anavim, because you can in your mind you can mix up the words. So therefore, that's why Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir. Aval basar ba'anovim. When if a person says Hareini Nazir, right? I'm not eating meat. Hareini Nazir mipsara, from the meat. So you can't. So how would you ever excuse him to say that he meant to say I'm a Nazir from grapes? Meat and grapes are something that's never confused. Loi michal, if a person doesn't confuse it. So therefore, according to Beis Shammai, according to Beis Shammai, I would think by the meat you wouldn't become a nazir. The itma ba'al, if it would tell me the chiddush by basar, by meat, if it would tell me the chiddush by meat, that what Beis Shammai holds you become a nazir. If you say hareini nazir basar, and I will say that you really meant wine. You probably meant to say, I want to be a nazir from wine, and you said meat, because wine and meat go together. Because you're a nazir, because wine and meat are interchangeable. You meant to say, I'm a nazir from wine. You said meat, so that's why Beis Shammai says you're a nazir. But how does dried figs get confused with wine? Like Kamash Malon comes to teach you that no, that you even when you say Hareini Nazir Megroigras Udavela, Beis Shammai holds that you are a Nazir. If it would say by these two examples that Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir, Hani hu dekamri Beis Shammai, by these two cases Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir. Why are you a Nazir? Because you really wanted to take a Nazir from, let's say, grapes, and you said figs. Or you wanted to make yourself a Nazir from wine, and you said, I want to make myself a Nazir from meat. So there are slips of the tongue, and that's why Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir. Aval Delis, if you slip up and say, I'm a Nazir from a door, how could you say that's a slip of the tongue? Ema, I would think in that case, Beis Shammai would agree to Beis Hillel that you're not a Nazir. So therefore, from this you learn the fact that we say this case of that even if it's a door, you say Hareini Nazir from a door, Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir. Why? Because it's not that Beis Shammai holds that the reason why you're Nazir because it's a slip of the tongue, but rather it's we divide your words. You're basically trying to say Hareini Nazir, I'm a Nazir, and then you're regretting it in the same second. So that's why you say, oh, I meant from a door, or I meant from dried figs, or I meant from meat. So Beis Shammai says, once you said Hareini Nazir, you're automatically a Nazir, and you can't retract. Now, the Tana Delis, if it would only say the case of the door, right? So then, Bahal Kamei Beis Hillel, I would say Beis Hillel would agree to Beis Shammai in that case that you are. In that case, Beis Hillel only says that you're not a Nazir. But the other two cases, maybe they'll agree to Beis Shammai that it's a slip of the tongue, and that's why you're a Nazir. So we see that that's not the reason. So in order to get the clear Gemara over here, is that the Gemara just got through saying, basically, that this machlokes in our Mishnah is just an extension of the previous machlokes in the previous Mishnah. And our machlokes in our case discussion here is, you said, I want to be a nazir from the meat of this para, right? If it stands up. And it got up, and therefore Beis Shammai says, no, you're a nazir because you're trying to retract by from the statement of being a nazir, and there's no backsies. And Beis Hillel says, there is a backsies, you could take back your words. That seems to be the machlokes. But the question that's a little strange over here is, why do you have to come up with the whole story of a cow getting up? There seems to be another novelty thought process over here, a chiddush of this Mishnah. It's not just, the Mishnah could have just easily said, a man says, Hareini Nazir from the meat, Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir, Beis Hillel says not. But here it comes up with a whole story. There's a cow on the floor, and Beis Shammai and the man says, oh, this cow looks like it doesn't want to go. It thinks, the cow thinks to itself it can't get up. I agree with it. I'm not going to eat the meat of the cow. I'm a Nazir from the meat of the cow if it gets up. I mean, that's the case. Why does it take up such a case? Rava just expands on what Rabbi Bechama. I would think that Rava is a student of Rabbi Bechama. And Mikatani im amda me'aleha. Why did Rabbi Bechama state that if it stood up by itself, if the cow stood up by itself, then you become a Nazir according to Beis Shammai, not according to Beis Hillel? What's it relevant if it's standing up or not standing up? And does the Mishnah discuss that idea? So Ella Amar Rava wants to say that the Mishnah has a novelty over here, another novelty, and then the Gemara just knocks that away. The cow was just flat out in front, crouching. And he says the cow looks like it doesn't want to get up. And he said, Hare olai carbon, that the cow is sort of saying to itself that if I get up, I'll run to the Beis Hamikdash and give myself up to be a carbon. So the guy says that's what the cow looks like it wants to say. I'm going to say the same thing, that if this cow gets up, I'm going to bring it as a carbon. But he said, Hareini Nazira. And basically he's saying Hareini Nazira, and I'm going to bring it as a carbon. So he's like sort of saying that this cow is going to be a Nazir carbon. So therefore, Beis Shammai says, you're a Nazir. You're a Nazir, because by saying that, we can derive from you, Nazirs don't bring cows for a carbon, but they bring other carbonas, and along with the regular carbonas, they add to it. So they bring this cow. You can say that you meant to be doing a lot of carbonas when you become a Nazir, if this cow would get up. So the Gemara says, if that's the pshat in the Mishnah, then the case of the door doesn't make sense. Bishlama para, I could understand the cow bas carboni. That's a possibility, because a cow is capable of being brought as a carbon. And therefore, I could say that's what the chiddush of the Mishnah is, that you can interpret that when you say the Nazir, you said Hareini Nazira in my medes, means you're saying that you want to bring this animal as a carbon along with your other carbon Naziris, and that's why Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir. Eladelis bas carboni, is a door capable to be brought as a carbon? So how would you interpret Naziris when it comes to the door case? That Beis Shammai says you're a Nazir. Ella Amar Rava. Rava says like this, and this is how Rava sees that the Mishnah is telling you something very interesting. The Mishnah is again talking about Shaisa Para Revutza Lafanav. There's a cow crouched down in front of you, and you look at the cow, and it doesn't look like it wants to get up. And Ba'amar, we go to Amud Beis, Yomid Amud Beis, Ba'amar, and you say, Hareini Nazir miyayin. You say clearly, I want to be a Nazir from wine. Im loy amda, if this cow never get, if im loy amda, if the cow does not get up without help, that's what you're saying. If the cow does not get up without me, lifting the cow up to get up, okay? That's what he said. Now, what's the point of what he's trying to say? What's the point? Is he trying to say that the cow needs me to help it get up? Okay, and he wants to show how strong he is that he can lift the cow. Okay, or the point of what he's trying to say is, you don't think this cow can get up, and I'm going to prove it to you that the cow can get up. So what's the difference? The cow got up by itself without you helping, without the person helping lift the cow. So now, Beis Shammai says Beis Shammai says, you said that you're going to be a Nazir. You're going to be a Nazir if the cow doesn't get, if it doesn't get up with me, if the cow doesn't get up without me helping it. Okay. I'm sorry. You're saying that you're going to be a Nazir if the cow gets up, if it doesn't get up at all, and then it got up by itself. So Beis Shammai will work it as if it never got up, and we consider it as if it never got up, and therefore you have to be a Nazir because you said I want to be a Nazir from wine if it doesn't get up. So it stood up by itself, but that's not called standing up. You meant to say if it doesn't need my help to get up. So that's not called standing up. Beis Shammai Sabre, Beis Shammai hold, Turfa the High Gavra, the point of this person is Mishum Oikme Bidehu, that he wants to prove that he can lift the cow. V'haloi Oikme, and he did not lift the cow. And because he did not lift the cow, if the cow is not considered as if it stood up. If it did not stand up, then he has to be a Nazir from wine. That's why Beis Shammai says that you become a Nazir. So for two reasons. One, for the plain reason that you said clearly that you want to be a Nazir if it doesn't get up, and it got up by itself. But that's not called getting up. The whole point was that you're going to show that you're the one that could lift it up. And since you didn't show that, therefore you have to be a Nazir. Beis Hillel Savre, Beis Hillel's hold, no, Mishum Deraviyahu. It looked crouched and it looked like it never going to get up. And therefore, you said, I'm going to be a Nazir if it never gets up. But it got up. Once it gets up, already you're not required to be a Nazir. The condition was broken. You said you're going to be a Nazir only if it does not get up, and it got up. And that is the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Only problem is that why would Rabbi Yehuda say that Beis Shammai even holds that you're not a Nazir? Let's look at the end of the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Af kisha amru Beis Shammai, loy amru ela ba'oimer harein elai carbon. Beis Shammai never said that you're a Nazir. Beis Shammai only said that the you're not allowed to eat the meat of this cow. That's what you meant to say. And the para mi komat b'spa midi. Did the para take upon itself anything, or did you latch it on to anything? You're not talking about the cow. You said hareini nazir miyayin. So why do you become usher on the cow? See, because the way Rava's first attempt at the Mishnah, he says you actually said I want to be a nazir from wine. So then why would Rabbi Yehuda at the end of the Mishnah say that Beis Shammai never holds you're usher on wine, you're usher on the meat, but the meat you never made a neder on the meat. You were only talking about the wine. So then you just adjust what Rava wants to say. And with this, we'll say what Rava says, and then we'll wrap it up. Ella, we're talking about, this is the way Rava says, that there's another novelty to this Mishnah. Kegoin, a person said, Hareini nazir b'psara, I make a nazir from not eating the meat of the cow. Oh, you said I'm not eating the meat of the cow, in loy amda, if it doesn't get up. So now Rava just expanded on what Rabbi Bar Chama said. You're making a nazir from the meat. You're not going to eat the meat in loy amda if it doesn't get up. So chiddush number one, according to Beis Shammai, is you divide what he said. Hareini nazir, he wants to be a nazir. You can't take it back. Just because you said, oh, I'm in from the meat, no backsies. Once you said you're a nazir, you're automatically nazir. But you also said if it doesn't get up, right? If it doesn't get up. Now, but it got up by itself. Oh, so it got up by itself. Now, is that called getting up? And therefore, the condition was broken if it got up. Beis Shammai says, no, the condition was not broken because getting up by itself is not considered getting up. Because turpe dahu gavra, the reason, the thought process of this person that made this neder was mishum oikbe bidehu, because he wanted to show that he is the one that's going to lift the cow. But he didn't lift the cow, and therefore the cow, just by getting up, is not considered like it got up. So there's another chiddush of the Mishnah, is that that's not called getting up. So then the condition was not broken. In fact, it remained in place, that the cow didn't get up with the help of people, and therefore you become a Nazir. Beis Hillel Savre, Beis Hillel holds, first of all, Beis Hillel, just by the language alone, he would just say, Hareini Nazir Mipsara, you're not a Nazir anyway, because you could retract. But anyway, he would argue, Beis Hillel, as what's the point of the person? Even when he says that if it doesn't get up, he means to say is that Beis Hillel says when the guy looks at the cow, he says this cow will never get up. He doesn't matter if he lifts it or doesn't lift it. It's the point of the person is making this statement was that he was so confident that this cow is never going to get up. The point of this person was because he saw that this cow is crouching and looks like it will never get up. And then v'hakamas, and it shocked him, and it did get up. That's why Beis Hillel says, that's why you're not a Nazir. Well, Beis Hillel Savre, loy kamas, only if it doesn't get up, have a Nazir. It becomes a Nazir. But stop. V'hakamas, it did get up. It did get up, so therefore that's the reason why you're not a Nazir. Now, as I pointed out in our learning just now, that really Beis Hillel has another reason why you're not a Nazir, because even if the condition was not broken, he's not a Nazir because you're retracting of what you're saying. Frag the Gemara, would Beis Hillel hold Eli Kamas if it never gets up? Have a Nazir, you're a Nazir. So that means that certainly the condition was not broken. Wait a second, but you're saying Hareini Nazir Mipsara. But Ha'amri Mipsara, but you said I only wants to be a Nazir, and then you retracted it and said, oh, I mean from its meat, Loi have a Nazir. Beis Hillel says, you're not a Nazir. So the Gemara says, no, Beis Hillel is speaking on the thinking of Beishamai. The Tamai, the Beishamai Kamri, they're speaking on behalf of Beishamai. Lidi Don, in us, according to our Beis Hillel people, Afilu Loi Kamas, even if it doesn't get up, Name Loi have a Nazir. You're not going to be a Nazir anyway, because you're saying Hareini Nazir, and then you're retracting and saying just from the meat. Certainly you're not a Nazir. But according to you, the Amrisa have a Nazir, you say that you do become a Nazir. Don't at least agree to us the turpa the high dengavra mishum dervia, that the point of this person was that it's crouching animal, and once we see that the animal got up by itself, that makes the condition broken. You should not be a Nazir. Beis Shammai holds lav turpe the high gavra. It's not the intention of that person of just to prove that the animal can get up. The intention of that person is that he wants to show that he brought the animal up. He wants to show that he's a powerful person, that he can lift animals that are weighing thousands of pounds. He wants to show that he can lift it with his hands. He didn't lift the animal. Therefore, if he didn't lift the animal, the condition has not been broken, and that's why you're a Nazir. So if someone were to ask you on this Mishnah, what is the novelty of this Mishnah according to Beis Shammai? It seems that the Gemara just loves Beis Shammai. The novelty of this Mishnah is twofold. First of all, if a person says, Hareini Nazir Mibsara, I'm a Nazir from the meat of this cow, you're a Nazir. Why? Because basically you're saying, Hareini Nazir, I'm a Nazir, but I want to retract, I just meant from the meat of the cow. Beis Shammai holds, you said it statement, you're automatically a Nazir. But even furthermore, the condition of the Mishnah was that when a person says that, the cow is crouching, and I bet that this cow will not get up. What do you mean that this cow will not get up? Beis Shammai learns when a person says such a statement, he's trying to say that the cow is not going to get up if I don't lift it. So therefore, if the cow stands up by itself, that's not called getting up. That's not called getting up. And therefore, it says we look at it as if the cow didn't get up because you didn't lift it. So the cow is still in place. We don't look at it as a standing cow. And therefore, you said you're a Nazir if the cow doesn't get up. So you remain a Nazir. According to Beis Hillel, for two reasons you're not a Nazir. First of all, a person says Hareini Nazir and then changes his mind right away. according to Beis Hillel, you could retract in a second right afterwards and say, I don't want to be a Nazir, or I want to change it. So therefore, according to Beis Hillel, you're not a Nazir. But even according to Beis Hillel, that when a person sees an animal lying down, you're just saying a statement saying, oh, this animal is never going to get up. You're not saying that I have to lift the animal. You're just thinking that this animal will never get up by itself, even by itself. And if the animal got up by itself, already that's the whole, that proved your point. Your point was wrong, and that's what Beis Hillel will say to Beis Shammai. Would you agree to us that you shouldn't be a Nazir because the animal at the end of the day got up by itself? So the condition was broken. You should not be a Nazir. And Beis Shammai says, no, we're still going to hold that this person is a Nazir. Again, a complicated daf, but we explained it as best as we can.